thing that immediately comes to mind, because I will also say in these classrooms, there were definitely in kindergarten, right at the beginning of the year. So literacy strategies weren't necessarily, or kids weren't yet readers. But what they could do is talk and communicate. And it was so exciting. And I would say that I know myself being a former primary teacher, like primary teachers get really good at sort of decoding what kids are saying and what they're meaning and the things that they're writing. We get really good at that. But it was a lot about communication. So just asking kids and taking time to listen. So when we're doing any sort of task, like what are you noticing and how are you making sense of things? We saw a lot of teachers asking questions like that we're opening it up for kids to look for patterns and just giving them time to do that. And then also that question, like, how could you convince someone else? For the most part, in primary classrooms, we saw lots of hands-on manipulatives, lots of tools, kids using with their fingers. And they would talk about, like when they would, like Ava mentioned, for example, that the commutative property, she didn't use those words, but she said, I have the backwards ones, 3 and 7 and 7 and 3. And we see lots of kids like using their fingers and showing us like, oh, 2 and 3, and, crossing them, and lots of hand motion type of things. In one classroom I was in, this was Rachel Gilday's first grade, and her kids were trying to prove something, and they used base 10 blocks. And so they were just like using what we would say are really representation-based proofs. So it didn't really even require reading and writing, like they were sense making in all sorts of ways, but teachers were able to recognize that and really celebrate it and take it to the next place.
And Jody, you were referencing, and then Chepina, I'm sorry, I'll let you answer too.
Oh, it's okay.
Jody, you were referencing that Ava also referenced an anchor chart. I'm curious, do you know what was on that anchor chart?
Oh, I do. I can still picture it. They had been working on ways to make 5, and the anchor chart had one of the images, it actually had a hand, and it's a little bit hard to describe, but it had like a pencil between the thumb and the 4 fingers, and then 2 fingers and 3 fingers, and then 3 fingers and 2 fingers. So it was just showing your hand, and like you have 5 on your hand, but the way that you group your fingers together are all the configurations of 5. Then right below that, it had like a representation of unifix cubes, same idea, where there was like 5 of one color, and then the next one was like 4 of one color and 1 of another color. So it was this beautifully organized chart. But the exciting thing about the chart was all of those things that were charted were things that kids had done. So they had played with their hands. Like, how could you show 5 on your hands in different ways? So the 5 representation was there, and they'd done something else with unifix cubes. So all of this, it wasn't like a poster that a teacher had purchased. It was like all of these experiences that the kids had lived that were now like anchored in the classroom. And it was wild because she was like, it's this chart over there. She just got up and went right over and showed. So it was like this, my colleague at UC Irvine, Val Henry, calls it mathematical residue. Like that chart and that experience lived with her through these other things that she was doing.
Love it. Chepina?
Well, related to what Jody was saying too, was that anchor chart had color, and it had like, it was meaningfully created by the students and the teacher collaboratively. So there were colors that helped to make those connections. And so we've seen a lot of teachers who use color on their charts to help show the connections, or to show how one idea is connected to another. And so that's a way that that students can make those connections without the words necessarily. And so I just wanted to add that as another strategy for teachers too.